The inside dust cover to Phil Haney's book, See Something, Say Nothing, reads, "At airports, train stations, sporting events, and just about anywhere Americans congregate in significant numbers, signs are posted by the Department of Homeland Security urge, if you see something, say something." When Philip Haney, frontline officer, intelligence expert, and founding member of the DHS, saw something, he went above and beyond the call of duty to say something. He identified serious terrorist threats, including links between the Boston Marathon bombers and the Muslim Brotherhood, and between the San Bernardino shooters and the global, I'm not going to say the name right, Tablighi Jamaat? Wow, movement. Well before their unthinkable atrocities were carried out. But rather than being commended for a job well done, the Obama administration, following the policy known as Countering Violent Extremism, CVE, responded not with gratefulness, but with orders to sanitize or eliminate the information and launch investigations against Haney. The thinking beyond the CVE policy is the same thinking that led President Obama to declare one day after the November 2015 Paris mass terror attacks that the Islamic State, also known as ISIS, has nothing to do with Islam. That little tidbit to whet your appetite for tonight. Phil Haney studied Arabic culture and language while working as a scientist in the Middle East before he was hired as a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security in 2003. After becoming an armed Customs and Border Protection officer, he served 2 tours of duty at the National Targeting Center near Washington, D.C., where he quickly was promoted to its advanced targeting team. For more than 40 years, he has specialized in Islamic theology and the strategy and tactics of the global Islamic movement. He retired honorably in July 2015. Please welcome to San Angelo, Phil Haney.
Thank you, everyone. It's really great to be here. I have an extraordinary honor and privilege that very few people get to have, and that is to travel around our country from north, south, east, and west, and meet groups of my fellow Americans. And one of the things that I got to see, and I consider it as a rare privilege as watching something be born, is the spark of hope that ignited in people's eyes across the country. And I would tell the groups that President Donald Trump was going to become president well before the polls indicated that, simply because I felt that I saw the groundswell of people waking up, that spark of hope, and the mainstream media wasn't measuring it. And I kept saying so. They were dropping instruments down to a certain depth of the water, so to speak, but they weren't measuring the deeper currents. And that's what I had the privilege to see. And the evening of the election was in Omaha, Nebraska, the heart of the country. I know this is the heart of West Texas. The heart of the middle of the country, on purpose. I wanted to be literally in the middle of the country on the night of the election. Because my hope was it would be high fives, fist bumps, and hallelujahs. And it was, wasn't it? That night, you don't really have to raise your hand, but you can. How many people stayed up and watched the calling of Pennsylvania? You wouldn't want to miss it, right? Whether you thought about it or not, you may have asked the same exact question as the people in Baltimore on the night of the battle between the British fleet and Fort McHenry. And the question was, oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? It's a question. And what is the question? Is America still a country? That was the question. How many of us, without realizing it in those particular terms, went to bed that night? Well, if we stayed up, we didn't have to ask it because we knew. But for those who went to sleep and then woke up in the morning, the first thing they wondered is who won the election. And wouldn't you say that they were more than pleasantly surprised that the flag was still waving in the morning, just like they were in Fort McHenry? Because in Fort McHenry, everybody in the city of Baltimore was up on the top of their houses watching the battle between the British fleet and the soldiers at Fort McHenry. When I grew up, I was kind of given the impression it was a passive battle. Meaning our Americans were just kind of hunkering down in the fort, hoping and praying that the bombardment would stop, but it wasn't like that at all, actually. There was a battery of 12 or 20,000 pound cannons on each side of the fort, as big as telephone poles. And in the front were a battery of 50,000 pound cannons that were big enough to stick your head in the board. And I know that's because I did it. I wanted to, and so I can say that they were that big. And they were blasting away at the British fleet, which therefore had to withdraw to just out of lethal range. And therefore they had to lob their artillery into the fort. So it was basically a stalemate. But in the morning, the flag was still there. And many people across the country were surprised that, in fact, it was the red, white, and blue, and not the flag with the H and the arrow. True, right? Because the election, in all honesty, wasn't run or won or conducted on a platform, the Republican Party platform. It was really conducted on the basis of the fear of Hillary Clinton. And the reason why Donald Trump was chosen among all the candidates, including Ted Cruz, who would be a fantastic president at any given time in history, was because Donald Trump was actually the only one people thought intuitively would actually have the audacity to point his finger at Hillary Clinton and call her a liar to her face. And he actually did it, didn't he? And that's why we elected him. Remember Henry the Hawk? I'm the roughest, toughest chicken hawk that ever lived. Remember him? The little guy? And he was talking to Foghorn. I said, boy, you're one slice short of a loaf. Why? What was Henry the Hawk's problem? He was always bragging. He was too arrogant to learn anything. And it wasn't that he didn't know he was a chicken hawk. He knew he was a chicken hawk. But what was his problem? And why was Foghorn Leghorn having so much fun with him all the time? Because he didn't know what a chicken was. And that's how Sylvester the Putty Cat became a movie star. He was a barnyard cat. And Foghorn would say to Henry, "Tear the Putty Cat, boy, go get him." And Henry the Hawk would run off chasing Sylvester the Putty Cat around the barnyard. That's the Republican establishment. Foghorn Leghorn was Donald Trump. And he's now president. I said, boy, I might have a big mouth, but I got a heart of gold. It's pretty funny. So I would call him Foghorn Leghorn. I don't think he'd mind. I think he'd find it funny too. Because especially the part about Henry the Hawk being the roughest, toughest chicken hawk who didn't know what a chicken was. That's the establishment. The title is String the Swamp. Remember the swamp? It's still there, right?
Yeah.
There's mutants in the swamp. Not just normal creatures like those, but there's mutants, and they have R's. They've hybridized ones with R's after their name and ones with D's after their name and become mutant creatures. And I realized this morning driving here, I have a lot of time to think when you're driving, that there's amphibians in there too. And they can crawl up out of the swamp and turn it, walk around on the land. So I don't think President Trump really realized how broad, deep, and wide this swamp really was. There's one funny political cartoon where he's sitting in his chair in the Oval Office and water up about to here, and he said, boy, this thing's a lot deeper than I thought. And so there are. And I do tell people in public, and I will keep saying it, is that President Trump, if you want to drain the swamp, I can help you, because I know where the valves are. And that's the point. The bottom line, the reason why I was investigated 9 times, stripped of my gun in public. All my access to the systems was cut off. They revoked my secret clearance and sequestered me for 11 months while I was under 3 simultaneous investigations. One from the Inspector General of Department of Homeland Security, the second one from Internal Affairs, my agency, Customs and Border Protection, and the third one from the Department of Justice, which convened a grand jury under Eric Holder to find probable cause to indict me on criminal charges and put me in jail. Can you imagine what it must have been like? 3 simultaneous investigations, stripped of everything, with no assigned job duty, waiting for the memo or the proverbial knock on the door, or Mr. Haney, we need to ask you a few more questions. Of course, I wasn't in it alone, but I'm married. I just had my 42nd anniversary. It was hard on my wife, more physically than it was on me. But we made a covenant, she and I, an agreement, standing in our living room, face to face. I mean, we were actually hugging each other, face to face, tears both our eyes, coming down both our eyes. We're not going to give up. Whatever this thing requires us to do, we're going to stay in it till the end and see it through. We're not going to back down. We made that agreement with each other. And I made the agreement really with her, but I also made it with everyone, my fellow Americans too. Because when I took the vow, I took it very seriously. I was brought up by an Iowa farm boy who taught me the Midwest motto, which is stop whining and get to work. And my dad dispensed with all ceremony. He was not a ceremonial person. If you needed correction, my dad was quite capable and willing to give it to you. And I worked with my dad in construction from the time I was 10 until I got old enough to go to college. And then I wanted to be a thing called an entomologist. Does anybody know what entomology is? I was a field agricultural entomologist. Not a lab nerd, I was a field nerd. I didn't wear a lab coat and pencil holder and clipboard. I wear cowboy boots and a baseball hat, and I worked directly with farmers in the field, helping them save money. I was a specialist in the economics of crop production, plus an entomologist. So I had a real science knack. I went to the University of California at Davis. My poor alma mater, which now Janet Napolitano has been inflicting herself on, because she's now the chancellor. And she told the law enforcement officers in the UC system when she designated the entire campus as a sanctuary campus, not to cooperate with federal law enforcement. And boy, when we heard that announcement, we were in California, I turned to my wife, Francesca, and said, that's exactly what she did to us as federal law enforcement. She forced us to violate our vow by not following the law and not being able to track these individuals that were coming into the country. By the way, how many people here have taken the vow to help protect our country from threat, both foreign and domestic? Even if you're not active duty, does anybody here feel that your vow is no longer valid? It's still in effect, isn't it? That's how I feel. I'm retired federal law enforcement. I use the word honorably. You might have noticed that that was attached. There's a reason for it. Because after being investigated 9 times by my own government, there was never a certainty that I would actually be able to retire, but as from the natural perspective, from the rolling of the dice odds, it was more likely that I'd either be in jail or be fired and not have a pension. But through it all, I was able to retire. Because the outcome of those 3 investigations that I mentioned, they couldn't find probable cause. They had to drop the charges. And if you read the story in the book about the last 3 days, May 27th, 8th, and 9th of 2015, when I sat before the investigators of CBP, and they asked me 8 hours of unending questions. If you will read the second morning, something phenomenal happened. I woke up in the middle of the night, the first night after the long ordeal. I felt like I'd been punched into a corner, just holding my arms up, just waiting for the bell to ring so the round would be over. That night I was tossing and turning, and all of a sudden I heard a voice. If you do this, you will disarm the situation. First of all, tell them exactly what happened from the first day to the last day, and the truth of what you say will set them free, set you free. So I took the Lord's advice, and I went in, I said, in the morning on Tuesday, I have a proposal for you. Not to circumvent the process, but to help expedite it. After all, you're working on a case, right? We're all cops here. It just happens to be that I'm in the middle of the case. If you have a premise, what I tell you will help you confirm it. Perhaps, in fact, there may be things that you don't know. So it's a win-win for you. Do you agree? I'm going to tell you everything that happened from the first moment I got involved in the Boston bombing case until the end that brought us to here today. And if you accept the agreement, I'll put it on tape. I'll repeat everything, and that's exactly what I did. When I was finished, this woman who had spent 2 years of her career, who was a senior level investigator, was crying. And I didn't notice it when I was talking. But all of a sudden, she excused herself and went in the bathroom, which was near to where this room we were in, comes back, dabbing her eyes, looks at me and says, Mr. Haney, my estimation of you has gone up immeasurably. You have really touched my heart. I really don't know why. I mean, I don't really know. She didn't explain what was it about what I said to her, other than she must have realized that she just spent 2 years of her career trying to kill somebody else's career, and it was phenomenal. Because I didn't change my story, and I wasn't the one who leaked the information, which is what I was being accused of. The same kind of stuff you see on the media today. And when we were all done after the third day, we shook hands, the two investigators, face to face, and even though they couldn't legally tell me it's going to be okay, by their body language and their eye-to-eye contact, I knew it was over. And as I walked out that door, it really was. It is finished. It is over. And I found out during that time that the DOJ had dropped the charges. See, there's two ways. There's administrative and there's criminal. So DOJ was going after me from the criminal, and my own organization, CDP, was coming after me from administrative, so they could either fire me or put me in jail. And they were colluding together illegally to do it. Yeah. The people that are going after Sessions and Gorka and Flynn, with a little question mark after his name, and who else? President Trump himself, Steve Bannon. Those people are the same ones that came after me. Except I didn't have the benefit of a Twitter campaign or any ability to say anything in public because I was still active duty. And if I had said anything in public, like a Snowden or a Chelsea Manning or a WikiLeaks, that would have been it for me. It would have been over. So, my lawyer, one day when we met with the attorney or Inspector General of DHS, tapped his forehead after we were done with the meeting, standing out on 2nd Street in plain view of the state or the U.S. Capitol and the Rayburn building where the House members have, including Louis Gohmert, by the way. He was my best supporter through all of this, along with Michelle Bachmann. Of course, she's not in office any longer. And he tapped his forehead and he said, Philip, the things that you know, the things that you have in your head, people will kill you for. And he wasn't talking about jihadis from Yemen. He was talking about people in the Square 2 Mile area where we were standing. Can you imagine how surreal it would be to have somebody tell you that when you can see the U.S. Capitol? Standing, you know, the symbolism of it is just overwhelming. So the point is, have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? And that's basically what happened. I became my own administration's adversarial. We had an adversarial relationship for nearly 10 years. Next, please. To contradict the narrative that emerged in the Obama administration that Islam has nothing to do with terrorism. When after all, chapter 8 of the Quran, verse 60, says the word prepare to terrify your enemies. Terrify. And there, I mentioned this already, there are valves that are open that should be closed, and valves that are closed that should be open. In order to drain the swamp, you're going to have to put some fresh water in there. Go back if you can. And the valves that are open that should be closed are called leaks. And I have a lot of good inside colleagues that are not inside the administration, but inside the structure, the political structure of Washington. President Trump is beginning to come to terms with people, the fact that people are lying to him in his own administration. He's starting to wake up. Not wake up, just simply realize it. Remember when he confronted Abbas about last month? You lied to me. He said it to him directly. You lied to me. You said you were raising your children in peace. But I find out from the Israeli government that you're aiding and abetting terrorists. You see in this picture, it's a little bit hard because of the, well, this one's better. See that big storm in the background? That's called Hamsin. This is Raqqa. You've heard a little bit about Raqqa in the news because that's where the jet was shot down in an attempt to open up the city of Raqqa. Well, this storm on the horizon is a great allegory for what we as a country are facing. A storm. Let's call it a constitutional storm. And what about those clothes that are lying there on the ground? Where did they come from? They came from people who shed them like caterpillars shed their skin and disappeared. Where are they now? And who are they? The reason why I love this picture so much is it shows people engaged, trying to protect their city and their own fellow countrymen, their wives and their families. And they're walking around among these garments that you can't tell who used to be in them. That's the immigration problem we're facing. And the storm on the horizon is the other storm that we're facing. However, before I go any further and forget, we have a lot of reason to be thankful today, don't we? We had some real good news the last couple days. The DOJ is going to side with Texas in the sanctuary city case. That's big. Real big. Thank you, Texas, for taking the lead on that. Now the DOJ is agreeing with you. And then, of course, today we had a religious liberty issue resolved, and we also had, of course, the ruling from the Supreme Court that the EO, the executive order, is valid. Now they're going to hear it in the fall, but there's no more stay on it. So why did he pick those particular countries? Because people like that are coming from them. The reason why I picked the original 7 and now 6 is because they don't have a functioning government, meaning, except for Iran, if you want to call that a functioning government. They don't have archives or databases or a way of verifying who people's identity are. So they're like those people that used to be inside those burqas or those garments. We don't actually know who they are. They do. I can guarantee you that. They know who they are. Because in the Islamic worldview, the identity is bound up in your family. Much more so even in our culture. We know our grandparents, and maybe some of us know our great-grandparents, but people in the Middle East can trace their family back for 10 or 15 or 20 generations. It's the center of their identity. The family and then the village. Just like the man called Ishkariot, Judah Ishkariot. That's Judah, the man from this particular village. Kariot means village. There were a lot of people named Judah, so they would distinguish. You're married from San Angelo, you're married from Fort Stockton, you're from Austin, you're from San Antonio. So that we know we can tell each other apart as to where we come from. That identity, that tribal identity is still the core of society in the Middle East. That's why there's so much fighting, because it's tribal. Does anybody know how many ethnic groups there are in Iraq? 72. How many languages are spoken in Iraq? Turkish, Farsi, Kurdish, and Arabic. Iraq is a heterogeneous country, like America, with more than 50 states, if you will. How do you know when you're in your own territory and in the rival tribe's territory? They're called boundaries. And what happens to you if you cross the boundaries? And paradoxically, maybe, the smaller the tribe is, the more violent they are. Why would that be? Because they have to fight to survive harder. But there are places in the Middle East and the Gulf states like Qatar and Oman and UAE, etc., that only have one tribe. And they don't actually have a government. It's run by the sheikh and the king. There's no elections. It's hereditary. It works okay, but there isn't any such thing as what we think of as an election. And so those countries or areas in the Middle East that have only one tribe are more stable than the ones like Iraq with 72 tribes, or Libya, which has even more, where Gaddafi came from. Gaddafi means slaughterer, by the way. His tribe is a fearsome tribe, and he came and he took control of the government of Libya by being strongman. So people followed him because he had showed strength. But that's why you have impossible virtually to implement democracy in the countries like Afghanistan or Libya or Iraq because they're tribal. And their first allegiance comes to their own immediate family, then their extended family, and then the region that they come from. So they know who they are. Next. You see why, if you don't know these things, why I've tried to develop a counterterrorism policy in the foreign arena is a hopeless endeavor. We try to superimpose our worldview on the worldview of people that live there and not to take it into account. What's the chances of us having an effective foreign policy? Not too good.
How can you vet it?
What?
How can you vet it?
Well, it's like vetting those people in those discarded clothes right there. But it's the same here in America with our domestic counterterrorism policy. I think if you click on from current slide, it'll bring it back up at the top. Okay, forward. Just push enter, and it'll work easiest. We have, I've mentioned this already, but let's reiterate it. I would like to encourage you that from now on, going forward, to banish the concept in your mind that it's I am only. I am either too old or too young, or it's just me. That I can't really do anything because it's just me. Well, we need to flip that equation around, because it's a government of, for, and by the people. And every one of us here has a place that we can participate in the process of government. And especially with people within the community of faith, there's been a long debate going on about whether we should be involved in government. Let's take a look at the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, listen to what they say next. That in order to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. Who institutes government among men? The Creator who endowed us with the rights. Wherefore it follows, if you believe that you are therefore bound by duty as a citizen and a patriot to participate in the government that was instituted originally and specifically in order to protect the rights that we were endowed with by our own Creator. It's circular. It just goes around and around. And no matter how effective the federal government might be at any given time in history, even at its most ideal level, when everything's running fine, they can only reach out so far. The federal government is not designed to be the magic easy button for the challenges that are faced at the state and local level. That's where we come in, we as citizens. So we address the challenges that we face at the local level, at the grassroots level, just like we did in the election. And then the system that we are living under, the constitutional republic, actually does function. By the way, wasn't it intriguing, didn't you notice, that today when the announcement was made that there was hardly any fanfare? Why was that? Because they knew they lost, and they were so subdued. It's like telling a child to go stand in the corner. They didn't say hardly anything, did they? The ones that put up all the noise and created all the pushback the Fourth Circuit and the Ninth Circuit. By the way, the two cases have now been combined. When the time comes in October, if we even get to that point, because there are other legal avenues that President Trump can pursue, there won't be a decision for the Fourth and the Ninth. They've now combined together. So we actually saw the system work today exactly the way it's supposed to. And that's something to be thankful for, because we're the only country on the face of the planet that has a government that functions like this. And it's something to be thankful for, that even in the middle of all the chaos, that it still worked, which proves what I've been saying. Because believe me, there's all kinds of communication going on behind the scenes through the networks of individuals that are part of the system of government that we live on, making sure that the Supreme Court judges are very aware of the feeling of the people across the country, and they take it into account. So it's something to be very encouraged by going forward. Not to mention the election itself, which Huffington Post said on the morning of, there was a 98% chance that Hillary Clinton would win. Now how in the world could they possibly be so wrong? You knew when I knew? Really knew? Anybody here a stock market person? Well, remember, did you notice that they were constantly announcing the fact that the stock market was dropping? Each time they would make an announcement about the electoral college tally, they would also shoot over to the stock market, and it was dropping. And that was supposed to be a thing of concern and alarm. But actually, with the benefit of hindsight, we realize now that that was the indicator that Trump was going to win. Why? Because of all the deals that Hillary Clinton made with the leaders of the world, she was going to set us up to be devoured by a bunch of vultures. All these arrangements and these multi-billion, 100 billion, who knows how many billion-dollar deals she made with this leader and that leader, and they were going to descend on us, and she would have enabled them. So what happened is they began to realize that the thing was not going the way they were told. They backed out. They started scattering like a flock of pigeons. And then they sat up in the tree for a while, like vultures will do, and they kind of looked down, and when they realized the way they could start back and start the investment process on the other side of the coin, they did it. And immediately the stock market went right back up again. Because these people live on forecasts and trends. People in Texas, you know who T. Pickens is, right? I had a chance to go meet with him twice last year, one in May and another in April. The first one was in downtown Dallas at his office. T. Boone is virtually deaf. Did you know that? You have to yell really loud and sit right next to him. He's got a big screen, a huge big screen in his office. The stock market stuff, there's numbers all over the screen, you know, like ants all over the place. And then sitting next to him is a little screen, and he's watching it constantly. He's virtually addicted to the stock market. You really have to yell loud just for him to hear, but also to get his attention. Mr. T. Boone. So I was thinking about how am I going to convey the problem with removing information from the federal law enforcement database in a way that he will understand it. And it just hit me. Mr. T. Boone, Mr. Pickens, if I was able to go around and just literally pull one of those numbers right off the screen, gone. And then let's do it again. And how about another one? How long would it take before you would be incapable of discerning the trends in the market? Not too long, son. And I said, that's counterterrorism right there. When you take the information, the dots we hear about, out of the system, there comes a point of critical mass when you're no longer capable of accurately predicting or forecasting or discerning trends. And believe me, as an entomologist, the quality of an entomologist is observation of behavior, because all living things have behavior patterns, and careful attention to detail. That's where the nerd part comes in, writing everything down, right? So if you have training in observation of behavior and careful attention to detail, and you happen to be an ant specialist like I was, really an ant specialist, what you do is you follow the trail and you find the nest. That's counterterrorism right there. And so I just took the skills that I had as a field entomologist that I used all over the world, particularly in the Middle East, and applied it to counterterrorism, and it worked, because living things have behavior patterns. For example, tonight, illustrating strategy and tactics. What will our strategy be for everyone that's here in the room tonight? What will our strategy? Strategy means your goal. What is your goal when we're finished with the meet and the school bell rings and we all go get ready to go home? What will your goal be? What's your purpose when you get done tonight? Go home. It's simple. 2 words. That's your strategy. Go home. But what's complicated and kaleidoscopic about it is not the strategy, it's the tactics. How do you go about doing it? Because how many different ways are there for you to go home from right here? A bunch. And same with you. And same with you. It's tactics, and that's the distinction between strategy and tactics. And if we did Groundhog Day here for a month, we came exactly, everybody sits in exactly the same spot, and your car is parked in exactly the same spot out in the parking lot, and the school bell rings at exactly the same time every single day for 30 days. None of us will get home at exactly the same time, any given night. Why? Because all the innumerable variables, your foot's tired, it's raining out, you have a honey-do list, a million different things. That's all tactical. But your strategy never changes. That's also the global Islamic movement. Their strategy is to implement Sharia law in the whole world. Simple. The deen of Allah, Yahatun fil al-arth, will prevail in the whole world, including here. We're not an exemption to it. But as complicated of implementation of Sharia law, as simple as that is to say, is the tactics. And there's 2 major approaches. Think of us as our country as a sponge, big old sponge, floating in a pool of water as big as this room, and floating around in this pool of water are all the other sponges of the other countries of the world. What is the natural thing that's going to happen with the sponge as it's floating along in the water? It's going to get saturated. Water's going to soak into it. What if you're not satisfied with the rate of the saturation? You're impatient. You want it to be done now. What are you going to do? Push on it. So that's terrorism. What we call terrorism is simply a tactic to achieve the same exact goal, which is the saturation of the sponge. And once that sponge becomes super saturated, then what do sponges do when they're completely soaked with water? They don't sink, they just kind of float along the top of the water, right? So the real question, friends, is if our adversaries in the progressive left, and I mean ideological adversaries, and or the global Islamic movement's goal, strategy, is to saturate the sponge. And they're using from the bottom up and also from the top down terrorism and or influence like on the Muslim Brotherhood soaking up from the bottom. Then the question is, how do you waterproof the sponge? How do you keep the sponge from being super saturated? Isn't that what we're trying to do? Is keep ourselves from being saturated by stuff from outside that's not constitutional? Well, the answer is in the Constitution. It's Article 6. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the what? Supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. We saw the application of Article 6 today with the Supreme Court ruling. Were the judges of the 4th and 9th Circuit abiding by the Article 6 of the Constitution? No. And that's why we have a Supreme Court. And they were unanimous in the observation that this is an odious decision. Stinks. What odious means. Because it violated directly the Constitution, not to mention the other law that the EO was actually based on, which we'll see in a little while, 8 U.S.C. 1182. There's the way to keep the sponge from being saturated. Would you agree that's an easy allegory to picture, that we're like a sponge? See, the other thing about the sponge floating on the water is you can't take the sponge out of the water. Why? Because that's the world that we live in. We are bound to live in the world that we are in. We can't take ourselves out of it, but we don't need to. We can bump around in there with all the other sponges as long as we're protected by the waterproofing of the Constitution. So my encouragement to all of you is, whatever arena, whatever area of endeavor you find yourself involved with in the days, weeks, and months ahead, make sure that whatever it is based on constitutional principles. And that will make you immovable. It will make you confident because you understand the principles that our country was founded on. It will also make you competent. And we need to be both. And I would dare say from my observations that we've been lacking a little bit. We need to become up to speed on our confidence. That's enough by God and no more. Because of this, I'm not going to take it anymore. It's the Popeye principle. I can stand all I can stand, and I can't stand no more. So everybody here needs to go out and buy a case of spinach from Walmart and have it on hand when you need it. It's time to open a can. And what's the can, really? The spinach is really just the Constitution. But if you go lapsing into the arena of the left, who uses subjective phrases like inclusion and diversity and fairness and equality with no definition, you enter into Alice in Wonderland, and you're being ruled by Humpty Dumpty. Because didn't he say, words mean exactly what I want them to mean, no more and no less. To understand that better, how ominous that is, substitute the word border. Borders mean exactly what I want them to mean, no more and no less. I'm the one that controls the meaning of the word, therefore I control you. And if I get too close to you, you simply change the definition of the word. And now I've suddenly committed a crime that 5 minutes, a social crime, maybe even a real crime, that 5 minutes ago I didn't even know existed, because you are the one that controls the meanings of the words. So we need to take the clicker and change the channel and put it on the constitutional channel. If you get yourself into the squirrel cage of subjective, definite meanings of words that have no definition, you will run around in circles, which is basically what we've been doing. Not entirely, otherwise we wouldn't have won the election. Nonetheless, wouldn't you say that what the election really did was define the battlefield? Before it was obscured and camouflaged and overgrown with weeds and stuff. Now we know exactly where the battlefield is. And how do we know it? Because the people that used to dominate that territory have now been forced to come out into the open. Because if they're going to accomplish what they say they so passionately believe in, now they're forced to come out from cover. Because they were enabled by the previous administration, they were given all kinds of special protections and provisions, and they made our life miserable because of it, forcing all kinds of social experimentation down our throat and telling us that we were going to like it because we're the ones that are defining what these terms mean. Fooey on the Constitution. If President, or I should say if Hillary Clinton had won, we would be in big trouble. Because those vultures I mentioned before would have descended on us. And they would have started eating us alive. The whole international community would have participated in it. They would have eaten us for supper. Next. Next, please. This is Sandy Rios. Some of you know Sandy Rios, right? She's the first person in the media that I know that actually called it pending civil war. That was in January, about a week after the inauguration. Some of you know Trevor Loudon, probably knows Jim Simpson, and myself were at Family Research Council in Washington, and we did this show about the possible civil war. And here's where my term saturation plays in. We have the progressive left, and we have the global Islamic movement. Both of them are trying to saturate as one word. We hear infiltrate a lot, but that's what I call a Novocaine word. Because some of these words you hear so many times, after a while, your poor brain just becomes numb, like you got a shot of Novocaine right in the noggin, right? Because we don't know, we can't really, what does chocolate taste like? Heaven. The problem is, we don't have the language that enables us to describe actually accurately what chocolate tastes like as this abstract concept. Our adversaries work in the arenas of abstract. But we are bound in the arena of the word. If you're in a faith community, we all know what the word is. If you're in the constitutional, defenders of the Constitution community, then you know what the word means. And this, by the way, is a physical document, and so is Sharia law. You'll notice that the progress of that doesn't actually have a physical document that they can lay on a table for comparison, because it's evolving and mutating all the time. And enough is never enough. But with Sharia, at least we have the advantage tactically that they actually have a book that you can compare side by side, word for word, letter for letter. And that gives us the tactical advantage if we realize it. We haven't realized it up to now. We haven't invoked Article 6, because the whole argument about Islam and immigration is really an Article 6, not a First Amendment. If the Sharia law defines itself as being superior to all man-made forms of law, including the U.S. Constitution, then you basically by default have a major conflict. The rest of it is secondary. If it's another form of law, it directly violates Article 6 of the Constitution. That's it. You have to deal with that first before you even get to the First Amendment. And you'll notice another word that's missing from the equation. You'll notice it now that when I bring it up is the word assimilation. That's now become a taboo, racist, bigoted, phobic kind of word to expect people who immigrate here to assimilate. Is your family born here? Did anybody here immigrate? Family? Anybody that did knows that it was always understood and assumed that people, when they immigrated, would learn English and that they would become Americans. Hot dogs, right? Not anymore, according to our progressive left, because of diversity. Next, please. This is just some of the culminating expressions of the progressive left, the shootings that happened a couple of weeks ago. All this language and rhetoric they're throwing about cutting off heads and killing and stabbing and all that other stuff. They say they should have no consequences, or they act like they shouldn't. But we're all supposed to be held accountable for what we say, aren't we? And words do matter, even those. Next. Go ahead and click it twice. I'm not going to go one more time too much into this, except to point the bottom three. Each one of us here has probably a primary arena that we can work in. Some of you are in the political arena already. Some of us can find our niche in the social arena, and others of us, like myself, come from the law enforcement arena. But we're all actually fighting the same forces of gravity, malevolent forces of gravity. The flashpoint for the social arena, as we've already seen, has been immigration reform, hasn't it? The flashpoint for the political is our alliance with Israel, in particular, moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Why that, do you say? You might ask. Because that, of all issues in a global context, illustrates our sovereignty. The world is telling us we do not have the sovereign right to develop or establish a relationship with another allied country and put the embassy where we choose to put it. Just because it happens to be in a city called Jerusalem, they tell us we don't have the right to do it. That's sovereignty. There is no other issue on a global level that will define or illustrate our sovereignty than our simple choice to be able to put an embassy where we choose to. Law enforcement arena is the Muslim Brotherhood designation. That's in process. I was reassured today President Trump has not forgotten about it. He's just trying to find his footing and navigate his way through that swamp, you know. Next, please. The social arena. I've already mentioned it some, but I'll highlight this one. Click, please. This is the swamp on steroids. It's just a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo at first appearance. But down in the highlighted blue, it says that basically if you're a Muslim and you're affiliated with a terrorist group, but it's only in a limited way, that you can still get a visa to come to the United States. See the date? February 5th, 2014, 3 years ago and a half. That was put into the Federal Register. See Federal Register? How does our law system work? Congress makes laws, right? The next one, you notice when there's a flurry of them, executive orders when President Obama first came in. That's the next level. The third level, away from that, is directives signed by secretaries of the major agencies like mine, Department of Homeland Security. And J. Johnson signed a lot of the directives that got us into the immigration mess that we're in today. The third or fourth level away is the Federal Register. And they realized that to avoid the conflict and the media attention, they would simply drop these directives into the Federal Register with no notice whatsoever. And by default, unilaterally, it became law that you can allow people that are affiliated with terrorist groups into the United States. And then we, internally, were told, if you don't comply with the directive, your orders, you will suffer the consequences for it. Just like Jen Napolitano did with the law enforcement personnel at the University of California. You will not cooperate with federal law enforcement officers vis-a-vis immigration. Didn't she say that? What Sessions should do is give her an injunction. You will comply with the law, or you will be arrested and removed from duty, and literally follow through and do it. You take a couple high-profile examples like that, just like with the Supreme Court decision today, and that's going to shut down a lot of this stuff that we've been seeing lately. Speaking about borders and Humpty Dumpty, I started to bring that up. By the way, no borders, no walls, resist not our president, right? Antifa movement. But, how do you know, is San Angelo a sanctuary city? Good thing. But how do you know if you're in one? If I'm an immigrant running for sanctuary and I'm going to go to, let's just say, Kansas City, how do I know when I finally reach the safety zone of Kansas City? It's called the city limits. What's that? That's a border. Therefore, the progressive left is actually quite passionate about borders. It's just that borders mean exactly what they want them to mean, no more and no less. Not national borders, their own definition. And how do you know it when you invade somebody's safe space? It's a personal border. Who defines it? You do. So you violate their safe space and you've committed a social infraction, because they're the ones that define it. So they're actually quite passionate about borders, aren't they? By the way, how are we doing on time? We're good? Okay. This is like a buffet. There's probably at least one good Chinese buffet in San Angelo, right? I don't care if you wait for 3 days to go. You can only still eat so much. And this subject is like that. And with that in mind, I'm going to give you the PowerPoint, this PowerPoint, which has all of the references and links in the notes section of each PowerPoint slide, and you can send it out to anybody here that wants it. And that way you can walk yourself right back through everything I'm talking about. You don't have to worry about missing everything, because you can actually have it. And it's a lot of good source information. These kind of documents are invaluable, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Just pop quiz, just curiosity. How many people knew that that existed? Now I'll use it a little bit snarky, but I don't mean to be. You see how good they are at it? Not a single person, hardly ever, that I've ever showed this to, knew that such a thing existed. And yet this is our own elected federal government that's doing this stuff. That's why I said this is the swamp, friends. There you have it. In legal language, that's the swamp. Letting people into the country. Does anybody know about the hands-off list? Have you heard about that one? I talk about it in the book. I'm not promoting the book because, by the way, the book isn't about me. It's about us. I'm a harbinger. I'm a forerunner. I'm a foreteller. I'm a trumpet blower, a watchman. Modern version of watchman on the wall is a whistleblower. And the story in the book is a story of us, what happened since 9/11 up until now. I just happen to have the fortune, and by God's grace, to be able to survive the whole process. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a voice. I wouldn't be able to come and talk to you. If I had discredited myself, or the federal government had found a way to discredit me, I wouldn't be able to come and talk to you today. But I didn't. Because I never violated the chain of command. Ever. I was not a Snowden, I was not a Chelsea Manning, and I wasn't a WikiLeaker. I always followed the chain of command. I never lied and I never exaggerated. I spoke the simple, straightforward truth, just like my dad taught me. Never lied. And I didn't. And that's why I survived. Plus, I was a nerd. And I also took shorthand in high school. I'll show you how much of a nerd I was. There were 17 girls in the class, and I never went out with a single one of them. I was the only boy, and all I was there for was one thing: focus. Learn shorthand. I'm talking around 110 words a minute. When I was really at the peak of my abilities, I could transcribe conversations this fast as I'm talking. And so can you believe the times that I used it when I was federal law enforcement? My specialty was interviewing terrorists. And I would put a piece of paper right out there where they could see it and start writing in shorthand. And they would look at it, and it does look weird. I don't know if anybody has taken it. It's very weird looking. It's obviously got an intelligence to it, but it's still nonetheless very weird looking. And I would do that on purpose. But when it really came handy is when I was attending meetings like the National Targeting Center when it was led up to the shutdown of the Tablighi Jamaat case, which ultimately led to the San Bernardino. I sat in the meeting and took down the whole meeting. I have it. They didn't record it, but I wrote it down. That's what makes me so bold in my assertions. I was there and I wrote it down. And one time my direct supervisor was giving me the what for, that no longer, you're out of the research business, you can't do these reports, we call them MOIRs, Memorandum of Information Received. No more research, and don't expect any more special treatment from the agency. So I'm writing everything he says down in shorthand. He stops and looks, "Hey, what are you writing down?" "Everything that you're saying." So my dad told me to take shorthand. I thought it because he thought I was a nerd too. But it wasn't that. It was the Vietnam War era. And he told me he wanted me to have clerical skills, so if I were to be drafted, I'd at least have some possible chance of getting an assignment other than a gravel agitator. Who knows what a gravel agitator is? It's an infantryman. Next, please. Janet Napolitano, I already talked about. She was making this declaration about immigrant status for sanctuary city before President Trump was even inaugurated. You see, these people are very cynical and calculated. They already knew what they intended to do. Imagine if she wasn't stopped, meaning if she had no restrainer whatsoever, she'd be charging full speed ahead. Now she's got a governor on her. She better be careful. She knows it, not go too far, otherwise she can get shut down. But initially, their plan was to initiate all of these extra constitutional actions across the spectrum of our society. Now we find out this is having to do with immigration. MI5 says there's 23,000 jihadis living in Britain ahead of holiday security breaks. How do they know that? By the way, pop quiz. U.S. Southern Command, you've heard of them, right? You know how many people crossed the southern border in 2015 that were from SIC, Special Interest Countries? The same ones in the executive order that was just reapproved today? You know how many? 31,000. Yeah, that's one of the holes in our safety net. We're not even talking about people that are coming over off using visa fraud, or visa waiver fraud, or false identity, or marriage fraud like Syed Farooq from the San Bernardino shooting. We're talking about people that are literally walking right over the border. 31,000 of them just from SIC countries alone in 2015. That's 10% of the 315,000 that came over in total. See, here's just a little background on the travel thing. Next is today's decision. No, that's you guys, that's Texas. These are all real recent events. See, that's the 20th. Trump DOJ will back Texas in court with defense of anti-sanctuary law. What do you think is going to happen when they set the precedent in Texas? Janet Napolitano is going to be sweating bullets. That's what's going to happen. And they'll come after her. They've got to set it up. I like Trump because he follows chain of command. He respects the system that we are under. It's agonizing sometimes to allow it to unfold like a slow motion flower, but he's not circumventing the system. He's allowing it to work the way it was designed to work, and I give him great credit for that. We get impatient. It's natural. But it's also something to point out, and that is we have a lot of concerns and challenges, and it's easy to forget while you're confronting the challenges and concerns to forget what it is you're actually fighting for. The things that you're fighting against can distract you from the things that you're fighting for. And that's my message, to encourage all of us to bring to remembrance the things that we're fighting for and not just be completely distracted by the challenges to the way of life that we face. Because once you grasp that, it's like grabbing hold of a suitcase handle. If you go to LAX or Dallas, Fort Worth, and you've got a big, giant, bulky 90-pound suitcase with no handle on it, it's pretty tough to drag that thing, especially in Dallas. That place is like immense. Imagine having to lug a 90-pound suitcase with no handle. But if you got a handle on it, then it's something you can grab a hold of, and then it becomes a lot more manageable and doable, right? Well, this is the handle, friends. And each one of us plays a role in it, or the equation. Can you quantify what your contribution was in the election that led to President Trump becoming president? Can you? How about you? We can't quantify it, can we? Yet we know irrefutably that he won the presidency. That means there's a value to what you did, and you, and all of us. Every one of us contributed. We don't really have an ability like the taste of chocolate to quantify, to evaluate, to measure what our contribution was. Nonetheless, each one was important, and it's still the same way now. Let's try to graduate from evaluating what we do on the basis of some quantifiable amount and just get to one of those three arenas and master your subject and always base it on this. Don't leave home without it. I'm going to have to remember that American Express. I'm going to have to get another one. I'm starting to wear this for now. Next, please. Here's today. Ta-da! President Trump celebrates Supreme Court decision. That's good. Thumbs up. I really like him. Because as I said, he respects the chain of command and the rule of law. We're not. See, there's a difference between the president and the presidency. Right? That's also an important distinction to make. We've got to get them mixed up. President Trump is him. He's Foghorn Leghorn. But he's president now. And he's growing and shaping into that office. The office is immutable. We've had good ones and we've had crummy ones. But the office of the presidency is immutable. And that is what we should stand up for. Next. Here's the order. March 6th. Next. And here's the law, 8 U.S.C. Code 1182. It's very plainly written. The president has total authority to restrict entry to any class, group, ethnic group, you name it, from any place at any time for the sake of national security. How come the Fourth and the Ninth Circuit didn't address that when they made their decision, but rather instead based it on things that President Trump supposedly said, and by inference from them, disqualified himself from exercising his authority as president? That's pretty incredible, don't you think? You realize how dangerous that is. If you said something I don't like, you're never going to get a job in this town again. Period. Because you have been disqualified. By who? By me. Because I'm the one that defines the words. The judges are making decisions on things that are totally irrelevant, not related to the Constitution. Because Article 6 says that the judges of each state shall be bound thereby. Next. Next. Political arena. Remember, we're talking social, political, law enforcement. I'm just giving you a few examples of the challenges, what I call the flashpoints in each one. Mahmoud Abbas, remember I told you about world leaders telling us we don't have the right to establish an embassy in Jerusalem? Tells us not to do it. Mahmoud Abbas, the same one that lied to Trump not long after this. Next. Here's a guy, here's a dangerous individual. This is Muqtada al-Sadr. He is what I call the kid because his father was a famous Ayatollah out of Iran. He runs the Mahdi army, 10,000 people out of Basra in southern Iraq, infiltrated their way into the structure of the Iraqi political system, fighting on the side of Iran against the Sunnis. It's a real tangled ball of string. But he tells us if we move the embassy, that is a declaration of war against Islam. That's a very, very serious thing. Don't you think we should take him as face value? If you have kids that are playing out in the front yard, and there's only a 1% chance that those kids can get out of the fence and run out into the middle of the street, is that an acceptable risk? Just 1%. No big deal, right? 1% of 365 days a year is almost 4. I mean, your kids, by statistical certainty, will run into the street 4 times a year. What do you think their chances of getting hit then are? As a parent, you would never accept that, would you? Well, as citizens of our country, neither should we. Why are our elected officials putting us at risk by assuming that it's only a small proportion of the global Islamic population that are terrorists, and that they have hijacked the peaceable religion of Islam? First of all, what is a small percentage? How many people were involved in 9/11? What's the percentage of that versus the entire population of the world? Like ridiculous, 25 zeros, right? How many people from Fort Hood? No, people, yeah. How about Chattanooga? How about Little Rock? How about San Bernardino? How about Orlando? How about Boston Marathon? How many people total? A handful. But look at the consequences of their actions in our culture. It's a false narrative. We shouldn't take even 0.1% risk. That's their job, meaning politicians, elected officials. They don't really have any other jobs. Their job is to help protect our country from threat, both foreign and domestic. That's their job, period. Not all this other stuff is just really a lot of waste. Next. President Trump should move the embassy. That's just showing you some of the background support for it politically. Next, please. Law enforcement. Next. This is 3 weeks after the San Bernardino shootings. CARE, you know what CARE is, right? I think you guys have CARE. I'm being facetious. I know you have CARE here in Texas. They sued the San Bernardino City Police Department for unlawful surveillance of the Muslim community 3 weeks after the attack. That is what I call obscene hubris. Why? Because CARE is a front group for Hamas, and we've known it for 10 years. Now I'm showing you the example of how these Muslim Brotherhood front groups, aka terrorists, have saturated themselves into the social, political, and law enforcement arena. They should have no voice whatsoever. Why? Because they're known fronts for terrorism. We already established it in 2008. Can anybody tell me what happened in 2008 here in Dallas? The Holy Land Foundation trial. It happened right here. The largest counterterrorism trial in the history of America was done here in Texas. And we proved that these guys, like CARE, and the leaders of them, were fronts for Hamas. Why are they still operating? Why are they given opportunities to go and sue law enforcement departments who just went through a traumatizing terrorist attack and given a voice to do it? It shouldn't be allowed. Does anybody know a person named Sierra Claiborne? Her father's name is Gregory Claiborne. I met with him 2 weeks ago in Calabasas, California. He's the father of one of the 14 people that was killed in San Bernardino. And just what I call first level information that I gave him in my background on the San Bernardino attack made him cry and cuss at the same time. He actually represents 6 families and they have 3 or 4 lawyers and they're going to file a class action suit. I intend to help them in every way that I can. Because they deserve to know the truth, don't you think? He actually told me stories about face-to-face encounter with President Obama, how President Obama lied to him face-to-face. He said that there wasn't anything that we could do. There's no way we could have prevented it. But he forgot to mention that officers like me had put information in the system 2.5 years before the attack ever occurred and were forced illegally to take the information out of the system. Actually, I didn't even take it out. They co-opted my social security number, circumvented the security, and deleted it. But they forgot something that you learn in kindergarten, which is always look both ways before you cross the street. And they got smashed, and they will. History will. This is not over yet, friends. My story is like a balloon that keeps getting bigger and bigger. Not less and less, more and more. What I'd like to do is get re-deputized and go back into the administration and help address it from the inside. However, if that doesn't happen for whatever reason, I intend to continue to pursue this, because what will happen if we don't resolve the decisions and the policies that led ultimately to San Bernardino attacks and then these kind of legal atrocities, where a known front group for Hamas is allowed to sue the city of San Bernardino. If we don't address the reasons and the policies that went in to the San Bernardino attack, then what's the inevitable thing? Exactly. So that's the 1% of the kids playing in the yard. Am I going to just sit there and let them run out into the street? Heck no, I'm not, because I took a vow. And my vow is still active, and I go where my vow leads me. I follow my vow, and my vow is let me hear tonight. Just talk to you, because I'm still active duty. I have to follow this through, because I saw something. Therefore, I have to say something. Now you see why it's so important that I survived it. Because then I wouldn't have been able to talk to Gregory Claiborne, either. Would I? Next. Now we find out that all this folderol about countering violent extremism, CVE program, was a whole fiasco, a big sham. Why? Because they never included criteria in the program to evaluate how well it worked, or whether it worked at all. And the GAO found that there's no way to prove that it did anything except cause trouble for the American public and law enforcement officers like myself. That's the legacy of Obama. You can't confirm that it ever succeeded. That's it, in a nutshell. Because that was one of his preeminent, that along with health care and the Iran deal. And all of them are falling apart like castles on the beach right now, sandcastles. That's the swamp, friends. Next, please. Again, you guys can have all of this and look back over it. When Comey took a breath, split second, paused, and then said, but no reasonable judge would take the case. That was his fatal error right there. We knew, cops, we knew. Just like that. It's over, bro. You're like a chicken with his head cut off running around the barnyard. You don't even know it. It's like watching a trailer come off of a truck in slow motion. You just cringe because you know something bad is going to happen. But when he said that, he stepped over the line of his integrity. When my supervisor, who approved the records that were deleted out of the system, was told by our DFO, our Deputy Field Office, you are going to remove the records from the system. He's not as polite as me. He used a lot of tasty expletives. F you, I'm not doing it. He actually said that. Well, we're going to write you up for disobeying a direct order. Go ahead. Write me up. So they did. They backed down. He called their bluff, and they didn't do it. So they went another way, and they deleted him out of through the DFO, the Deputy Field Officer. Remember I told you about forgetting to look both ways? I tagged all my records. Every time anybody looked at him, I would get an email back. And when they deleted all those records out of the system, I got this stack of emails piled up like bricks in a wall. There it was, the second, and the person who did it. And what do you suppose remember I told you I'm a nerd, right? Remember Terminator? One of my favorite movies. Sarah Connor? Tell me all you know about Skynet. Remember that scene in the truck? And Arnie turns to her and says, I have extensive files. I have 42,000 files. And I gave them to Congress. It's all backed up. And if I do get an opportunity, I will take that information and put it back into the system again. That's what I'm waiting for, friends. That's why when I say I know where the valves are, I really do know where the valves are. I targeted the entire structure of the Muslim Brotherhood and then watched the Obama administration bring the very same individuals that I already created derogatory information on into positions of influence and authority within his administration, and tracked 150 meetings of those individuals with him in the White House. I say him, his staff, and hyperlinked every single one of them and put them in chronological order. I'm not really a nerd, I'm a hyper nerd. But I did it for us, right? Because I recognize the moment. It's all there for us. That's why I'm standing in front of you. Remember when I appeared on Meg Telly? It was the 10th of December, and I told her about Tablighi Jamaat. Nobody ever heard of it. Haney, you must be nuts. What's Tablighi Jamaat? And then they had her sidekick come on and say, well, according to the Department of Homeland Security, they wouldn't comment on the case, except they said that the story was full of holes. Well, if you're not going to comment on the case, then don't comment on the case. That's classic Obama administration. To stab you in the back while you're smiling at, oh no, we're not going to comment on the case, that wouldn't be appropriate. By the way, the story is full of holes. So then the next couple of days later, I was in Judge Judy, and I was doing a remote, which means I'm in a little bitty black room with a black box looking into, and I can hear in my earpiece the studio. And Judge Haney says, Mr. Haney, right at the end of the show, we've been told that your story is full of holes. What do you have to say about that? I said, well, if my story is full of holes, I'm not the one that put them there. And the whole studio burst out laughing. We could hear it. We're almost done with this part. Actually, we're just getting started. Yes, this is the beginning, friends. This is a good day to remember. We had some very significant things happen today. And it's really a great privilege to be here to reiterate. See, what I'm telling you now makes sense, doesn't it? In light of the decision of the Supreme Court, for example. That what I'm saying really did happen. And that we're gradually taking baby steps away from some of these destructive policies and actually beginning to reconstruct some of the principles, foundational stones that our country was founded on. Do you agree with that? The flag does still fly, doesn't it? We saw that today. I'm almost out of time. A couple more minutes. Okay, let's see if we can fly through it. One more. All this shows you is vis-a-vis the Iran deal that I wasn't the only one he was doing this stuff to. Look what it says. He deleted all these cases, shut them down unilaterally, and a lot of people were furious that cases in the pipeline for months, in some cases a year, and all of a sudden they were gone. See, this is April 24th. We didn't find out about it until April of this year. Stuff I'm telling you about started back in 09. I actually got investigated in 06, the first time, out of 9. The last 3 culminated right up to the point when I literally retired, which was July 31st, 2015. So now we're finding out that he was doing the same kind of thing across the board. Whatever policy he wanted to implement, if law stood in the way, he just ran it over, crashed right through it, like a tank. Go ahead, please. These are really, really super important. These are FOIA, responses to FOIA letters, freedom of information. Judicial Watch FOIA'd my case, the Tablighi Jamaat case, and said, why did you shut the case down? These are letters dated February of this year, signed by active duty personnel in the current administration. Bottom line, highlighted in blue. I know you can't read them, but you will when you look at it yourself. We have no evidence that the Tablighi Jamaat case ever existed. Therefore, we can't comply with the FOIA request. These are the agencies that shut the case down. Now they're coming 5 years later and saying we can't find any evidence that the case ever existed. That, my friends, as Houston would say, we have a problem. This is the swamp. This is bleed over from the last administration into this administration. And now I have it in living color. They're trying to say that the case never existed. Of course it existed. And what does that do to the families of people like San Bernardino or Orlando? Go ahead. This is the third one from the State Department. It was the Department of Homeland Security, Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, CRCL, and State Department that shut the case down. I told you I was there. I was taking notes in shorthand. And this is the other really significant memo that new Secretary Kelly signed. Go ahead. It says, look what it says, aligning the Department privacy policies with the law. Paragraph G of this 6-page memo. Pretty dry language until you read it more carefully. And we find out that no longer will foreign nationals and LPRs be granted provisions from the Privacy Rights Act, and it also applies to the database, information you put in the database. What does that mean, friends? Putting the pieces together, what does it mean? If you're bringing something into alignment with the existing law, what does that mean? It wasn't in alignment, which means, friends, that I was investigated illegally. And that they removed the information from the databases illegally. Now do you see why I can't quit? This is FOIA stuff and new Secretary Kelly. What am I supposed to do now? Well, I don't know all the answers. I know I'm going to keep doing what I did before, one step at a time. Go ahead. This is just Abbas and Trump. I was in Israel when this happened. It was in the West Bank. I took these pictures basically showing how much Abbas was actually lying to Trump. I took them on the same day. Those are murals dedicated to jihadis, those murals in Arabic. Do they look messed up and graffiti-ized? No, they're fresh. This is in Abbas's backyard, literally. I don't mean the backyard of his house. This is in Beit Jala, next to Bethlehem, and Beit Sahur in the West Bank, showing that their concept of peace with Israel is no Israel. And that's the attitude. That's what they want to drive into the sea. That's Tel Aviv, friends. Taken off from the airport in Tel Aviv. Look how that place is growing. When I first started going there 30 years ago, it was just a dinky little town. Now look at it. It looks like LA. You guys got some growing to do here, it says. And then here's real recent. This is where he confronted him and lied. He said, "You lied to me," not even a month ago. See, this is what Trump's finding out within his own domestic arena, too. He's discovering that people are lying to him. And he hates that. You're fired. You can see from his TV show, he'll put up with a lot, but he will not put up with that. And neither will American people. We don't expect perfection, do we, per se? But what we do expect is honesty. If you've made a mistake, fess up. Americans are really forgiving. If you're honest, if you're not, that's it for you. That's the symbol of the Muslim Brotherhood, the one who's supposedly moderate. That word in yellow in Arabic down at the bottom says wayayuda. It means to prepare. Prepare to do what? Terrify your enemies. The word terrorism is in the Quran. And you see an exclusion zone when you watch North America come around? Is there an X there? The no-go zone? So what does this symbol imply? Universal dominance, right? Through the use of force. If that's a moderate group, what the heck is a radical group supposed to look like? So just go ahead and go on through. We talked about some of this already earlier. Conclusion. One more, please. It's a good book, you guys should get it. But the phrase in there really struck me. The struggle of man against power is a struggle of memory against forgetting. Fancy language for it takes effort not to forget. And that's what our adversaries depend on. You know, there is a force in the world that's stronger than either the global Islamic movement or the progressive leftists. And you know what that force is? Denial. That's the oxygen that these groups have to have to survive. If you take away denial, they shrivel up, they die. They wither up and fall off the vine, because the only way they can exist in the bright sunlight, or exist at all, is to exist in the toxic atmosphere of denial. And this is the antidote to it. Or if you're a person of faith, the Bible. But there, you know, everybody knows that the Constitution is saturated with biblical principles anyway. So it's an overlap. You really don't need to debate it. If a person's an atheist and he's a valiant defender of the Constitution, me as an evangelical has no problem being an ally with him. Why? We can talk about theology anytime. But we have a common ground, which is the Constitution. And that's what we should focus on. One more. And this is my favorite quote from Abraham Lincoln, that the dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate for the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulties, but we must rise with the occasion. Isn't that true? As our case is new, so we must think anew, and we must act anew. We must all disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country, the last best hope on earth. Amen to that. And I hope we have some more statesmen, maybe some of you, who will express the values that we cherish as eloquently and plainly as President Lincoln did. The last slide. Those lines are straight. So don't be deceived by how do you verify that those lines are straight. You can even do it with your own, just like that with one eye. Just hold something straight. You find out that the lines are straight. So what is your measurer to keep you from being deceived and misled? Listen again. Hold it right up and you'll see the lines are all straight. I like it because it illustrates the challenge that we face, that we are easily deceived or misled. But if you follow this, you will never allow yourself to be led astray by an optical illusion, i.e. the progressive leftists or the global Islamic movement. Thank you very much for your attention, everyone.
So this year we passed ALAC in the Texas legislature. How do you feel about that? Is it going to be helpful?
Yes. It's certainly going to be helpful, and you guys also set a good precedent for other states too. Because I think it took you a couple times, right, to get it all the language straight. So that process helped other states. I think there's 12 states now that have passed ALAC laws, and there's going to be more in the days ahead. You know, Act for America is very strong pushing in that area. That's kind of their forte. So yeah, because that's Article 6. Basically just another way of describing Article 6.
So have you been able to look at that law yourself and judge
Well, I
if it's...
haven't read it in the final form. I was involved in the early embryonic startup part. And there was some of the circle people, what I call the alliance, kind of giving input into I call them putting taters in the pot. But as far as the actual final bill, I haven't read it.
Thanks.
I'm glad to hear you come here and speak. this evening. I think with all the news here in the last few weeks, we've been hearing about all the collusion stories against Donald Trump falling apart and the false information that's been being put out. But the true side of this is all coming to light now. That, it wasn't Trump doing anything, but it was, but now the true stories are coming out with, all the back dealing that's been going on, money changing hands, etc. So, first of all, I want to applaud you for standing up and doing what you're doing. The question that was in my mind as I was listening to you talk was, how many more of you are there out there? And how many have been railroaded out of their positions or commissions that we've never heard of?
Have you heard of Matthew Dooley from the Department of Defense? How about Stephen Coughlin? Some of you know him. John Mondolo.
Yes.
Some of you have heard of him. And I'm thinking about another one or two. But the truth is, there aren't very many. It's kind of a pyramid structure. Through, let's just call it the accident of history, when all the dust was settled, there was a handful of people, subject matter experts, that found themselves kind of scattered through the government. FBI, DOD, my agency, DHS, and we just happened to have had a deep background in this subject before 9/11. So we were ahead of the curve. And so if that pool of expertise is contrary to your policy, what are you naturally going to do? Get rid of it. And once they were able to knock every one of these people out of the arena, then what? There's nothing to stop them. And they moved into the open field and saturated our culture with these policies. And now, as you just said, we're starting to see the dark side of what they did. And for example, Loretta Lynch. Didn't we all know when the news came out that she met with Bill Clinton that something was fishy, right? There was a stinky fish in the trunk, right? We didn't need a lot of detail, did we? We just knew that by all rights there was something wrong with that picture because she's the Attorney General, he's the husband of somebody that's under a lot of intense investigation. Why would she be meeting with him? And then, of course, the next day or two later, Haney comes out and makes this fatal error. It was obvious to all of us, wasn't it? And now, the boomerang is coming around, and it looks like it might knock her right in the head, doesn't it? Because the very gallows, like in the story of Esther, that Haman built for Mordecai might end up being used for these people. Because it turns out Loretta Lynch was very much involved in trying to, what was the word, turn it into a matter. She was a wonderful linguist. Words that edge toward violence, I like that one. And man-made contingency is that. Stuff that our government came up. But yeah, you're basically right. So hold on, because we're just really getting started in this thing. And I'm glad for it, because it basically validates or proves in a certain way that what I've been telling people all this time is correct. I wasn't just some guy way out in left field, but I actually saw it happen from the point like when you plant corn. And here up comes the corn, the little baby corns, and watch it grow right up at my feet into a full field of corn. And now we're starting to harvest some of that corn.
Very good.
Does that answer your question?
That's a good answer. Thank you for your service.
Mayor Gunter.
Can you just give us a short history of why you were being indicted on specifically? You talked about the three things, you talked about whatever, but what's the thing that got you on?
It was, remember a person named Abdul Rahman al-Harbi? Remember what I said before, I'm not meaning to be snarky, but see how good they are? He was the young, I call him the kid, he was the Saudi student that was at the site of the Boston Marathon bombing that got his pant legs blown off, injured, and then tackled by a bystander acting suspiciously, taken to the hospital, admitted around 5 p.m., and then interviewed by the FBI until around 9. And then subsequently, the team went to his apartment and drug out the proverbial boxes and bags of stuff, and then reported to the NCTC, the National Counterterrorism Center, about what they found. And then the NCTC called my agency, where I work, the National Targeting Center in Washington. And we have this thing, it's called a targeting framework. It's a work product. It's a template. Fill in the blanks. Please open a targeting framework event, as we call it, on Al Harvey, and run it through both the low and what we call high side, the secret squirrel and the super secret squirrel information, and fill in the whole form. Bottom line is that Al Harvey was scheduled to be deported on terrorism charges. 3B, we call it, 3B charges. INA code 12 something or other, 3Bs, terrorism. Fast forward 24 hours and they rescinded the order. This is the request for the TF. This is all part of the answer. The request for the TF came in 0600 in the morning, which I found interesting that it was so exactly that moment. And we populated the TF and double, triple checked it. And at 17:52 in the afternoon, Monday after the bombing, notified the consulate in Riyadh that their citizen, Al Harvey, was going to be deported on counterterrorism charges. So get ready, he's coming. 24 hours later, it's rescinded. Then another day after that, Thursday the 18th, about 2:45 in the afternoon, Janet Napolitano is testifying to Jeff Duncan, House Chairman, Vice Chairman of the House Committee on Homeland Security, in an open hearing. Jeff Duncan asked her about this Saudi individual who's going to be deported on terrorism charges. Do you think it's really such a good idea to send him out of the country before we even have all the facts about the bombing? You got to keep in mind that at the time they had not found the Tsarnaev brothers yet. So the only person who was either a suspect or a person of interest was this kid, Al Harvey. And all of us cop types were doing what all cops do when there's a major crime or an attack. What do cops do? They dig into it. Does a guy have a brother or a cousin or this or that? Why do we do all that stuff? Because there might be another one. If you have an outburst of robberies on one side of town, you find out where these people live, so you can you do all what basically cop information. So I was involved in it. I went and looked, dug it up, found, lo and behold, Al Harvey's going to be deported, and as I always do with everything, if I look something up, I always keep it. I never look something up. If it's worth the trouble, I don't just let it go. I keep it and file it. Never expecting that about 3 days later, Janet Napolitano would actually lie to Jeff Duncan and say there was no person of interest, no subject of interest, and no person who was going to be deported on terrorism charges. That, my friend, is what I call in the book invisible shrapnel. She set off the third bomb in the marathon, and it hit people like us. The law enforcement who notified the Committee on Homeland Security that this kid really was going to be deported, they already knew it. When they asked her, and she lied to them, and they knew it. And so when she had the audacity to lie to them in public, of course now they're forced into a situation where they have to have the proof. So what do you suppose they did? My liaison in ICE, Ray Orzel, calls me and says, we need the proof. Can you fax it to the secure line at the House Committee on Homeland Security in the Ford building? Will do. And I did it. Thank God, Haney, because they were going to fire him. He walks it over to the Rayburn building and gives it to Jeff Duncan. Here you go. A week later, it gets leaked out of the House Committee on Homeland Security, and Glenn Beck holds it up with a camera on his show. And I remember seeing it at the moment when it actually happened and said, Glenn, I sure wish you wouldn't have done that. And the person that tried to build her career on investigating me through CBP also saw it. at the same moment in time in Washington and said to herself, I'm going to find out how that got on Glenn Beck's show. And that's what set off the whole chain reaction. And the problem is the House committee never stood up. We only provided it to them because they asked us for it, and then they let us twist on the rope and never intervened and said, hey, leave those guys alone. They only gave it to us because we asked them for it, and let us go through the whole ordeal. And that's how it all started. It accumulated from there up to the GOG, DOJ, Internal Affairs, CBP, and Inspector General of DHS, all three at the same time. All because Janet Napolitano set off the third bomb, which I call the invisible shrapnel. Now she's Chancellor of the University of California, and the people that were on the ground that got blown apart by the invisible shrapnel are still, in a sense, recovering from the wounds. You follow me? I know that's a long answer, but that's what happened.
It's just a hide or not.
The thing that bugs me, that I have a bone to pick with them, is that they never held her accountable. They have the information. What is it about these guys? I hate to say it, Mike McCall's the chairman. He's from here, Texas. He's compromised because he has a photo of Mustafa Carroll, who's the leader of CARE. And I told him so. I said, you guys have a Trojan horse inside of your committee. That takes a lot of audacity, wouldn't you say? To confront the chairman and the vice chairman of the Homeland Security Committee and tell them you have a Trojan horse in your committee? And they did, because to allow CARE to have any influence on the House Committee on Homeland Security, you tell me what that is. That's like allowing the mafia to come into the FBI investigation on the Gambino family in New York, isn't it? So anyway, a lot of this stuff is swirling around, and I had a lot of people in Congress look me right straight in the face and tell me, Mr. Haney, we're going to protect you, and we're going to protect your information. And then turn around and not do it over and over again. So this is a real serious problem. That's part of the reason why we're in a constitutional crisis now. Because these guys, whatever it is, I call it fear. You fill in the blank. Fear of what? Some sort of loss. Fear of prestige, fear of some lifestyle, I don't know what. But it's fear that keeps us, all of us, any of us, from doing what we know is right. And they're certainly not immune to it. So thank you for letting me give you such a long answer, but that is one step more intimate or more personal to help you see what it was like standing. I had the proof in my hand, literally. I went around and showed guys, look at this. I had put the cases, this also ties to the bigger part of the purging of the information. I had put the information on the Islamic Society of Boston, a front group for Muslim Brotherhood, in the system in May of 2009. That is 4 years before the Boston bombing happened in April of 2013. Would you like to guess how many times anybody within the law enforcement community queried any of those 118 records I tied to the Islamic Society of Boston? How many? 0. Good guess. How many do you think queried them after? 0. The federal government was doing outreach programs with the Imam of the Islamic Society of Boston. His name was Valley. They weren't investigating them. They were forming an alliance with them. When the Sarnea brothers came from that mosque, and that mosque has at least 40 individuals had what we call derogatory information, and about 20 different organizations tied to clear up to the top. Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Saudi Arabia, the whole big global network, all concentrated right there in ISB, and I put the whole thing in the system 4 years before the bombing, and not one person queried it. So here comes Janet Napolitano. No, sorry, we didn't get a ping. There was nothing we could do. There was no Saudi individual. In fact, your question is so full of misinformation and misapprehension, which I had never heard that word before. that is not even worthy of an answer. And she would not answer Jeff Duncan. And then she doubled down 2 days later with the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and said the same thing. I don't know where these rumors are coming from, but I just wish you would let us do our job. This is misguided information. No, it wasn't. And if she wanted to talk about it sidebar behind closed doors, all she had to do is say, yes, he was going to be deported on terrorism charges, but X, Y, and Z happened. I'll be glad to talk to you, behind, in a secret, non-public thing, and that would have been the end of it. But no, she had to lie to him and push right through it in public, and that's how come we got in trouble. Not her.
I've got to ask one question. You and I had a great telephone conversation yesterday while you were driving through several time zones. I was sharing with you that we now have a mosque, not just a room of prayer that some of y'all were being told, a mosque out at Goodfellow Air Force Base. Will you share with them some of your immediate thoughts on that?
The first thing I asked her was, where's the imam from? And she said he was Uzbeki. And I said, well, that means he's probably on an R1 visa. That means he's sponsored by somebody. So what's the natural next question you would ask? That's right, you guys are all on my intent. So why is that important? Isn't it important to find out who sponsored the guy? It's probably going to either be from Dallas or from San Antonio, most likely. So the question is, what kind of a mosque is it that sponsored it? See, to come to America on a visa, R1 means religious worker, you have to be certified and sponsored by somebody that's here, a citizen or an LPR, lawful permanent resident. You can't just come and get or apply for an R visa at the consulate. You have to be sponsored. That means this is deliberate and intentional actions taking place. This guy is going to come here and be put in this new mosque on the Air Force Base. And then I found out, she said, that military personnel from foreign countries that are Muslim have the right to invite guests onto the facility and go to the mosque. So what was the natural first question there? Who are these people going to be bringing onto the Air Force Base? They have a carte blanche passport to bring who knows who right through the gates of the Air Force Base. Why are they putting the mosque on there in the first place? Probably because a lot of people from the Middle East who are Air Force pilots come here and do some sorts of training, either basic flight or more precise precision stuff. And that's probably why. But there's several big serious holes in this whole system, and that's just one more example of these gaps in the wall. It's not just those guys over in those 6 or 7 countries. It's not just the guys coming over the border that are from SIC countries. It's not just visa fraud. It's also R1 visa, the religious workers. They're not going to pick some schmo, believe me, to come over here. They're going to pick a well-trained, what is called a qadi, a judge or a sheikh, somebody who's a hafiz, who memorized the Quran, who is capable. And they're going to bring him here. Remember, did you know that Syed Farooq was a hafiz? Syed Farooq, you know who he is, remember? Shooter at San Bernardino. What did the imam say when they first was on public TV? I don't know him. Really? He was a hafiz. That means he memorized the Quran. And how do you get certified as a hafiz? By the mosque that you attend. Which means what? You didn't get it from the University of Phoenix. You got it from the Shura Council of the mosque. Believe me, friends, what you're going to see in the days, weeks, and months, and years as we move into this is going to always, mark my words, come back to the mosque. It's not the internet. The internet is just like a prism that splits the light, and you can see the colors on the wall. It's just a tool. The force of gravity, i.e. the light that goes through the prism, is the Sharia and Islam itself, not the internet. The force of it comes from the mosque. Why? Because as I mentioned to you earlier about the sense of community with Islam and the fearful compliance with the provisions of Sharia law, if you make a mistake in that, you can condemn yourself to a horrible hell. So they rely on guidance from people senior, that are with prestige. And they follow everything that the imam does. So these guys like Syed Farooq are closely affiliated with the mosque. They're men of people of prestige and notoriety, not just some doofus that came, they decided to start killing people. Just the opposite. And besides that, the FBI had him on his radar because Enrique Marquez, his helper, provided the guns, and he were all already on the radar for what are called multiple failed plots. Syed Farooq's dead, so how did they do multiple failed plots? Before San Bernardino. So why didn't the FBI intervene? Same with Vidal Hassan, same with Omar Latin, same with Sarnea brothers. In every single case, those guys are on the radar. People like me put them in the system, and the FBI says we can't figure out if they're terrorists or not. And they let them go through.